Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take complex stuff, boil it down, and pull out the key insights, maybe even some surprising facts you need. Today, we are diving into something that, honestly, it sounds like it's straight out of a movie. A huge, really sophisticated cyber fraud operation. Targeting Americans, but run from, like, thousands of miles away. We're talking shocking amounts of money, very clever tricks, and actually a pretty major bust by law enforcement. It's quite the story.
It really is, and I think what's important about this deep dive is we're going to sort of peel back the layers on this recent Enforcement Directorate crackdown in India, the ED, so you'll get a real sense of how these things actually work, these scams, and more importantly, maybe pull out some, crucial lessons about staying vigilant online. It's essential now.
Okay, so how did this even start? I mean, where did the authorities begin to pull on the thread of something this big?
Well, it really kicked off with a pretty dramatic series of raids by the Enforcement Directorate. And this wasn't just one location. It was coordinated across 4 major cities in India: Pune, Ahmedabad, Jaipur, and Jabalpur. That coordination itself tells you something about the scale they were dealing with. They suspected something big right away.
And the results of those raids?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the numbers are kind of staggering. They seized, what, 1.1 crore in cash?
That's right.
Which, for our listeners, is roughly 1.4 million US dollars. Plus 7 kilos of gold, 62 kilos of silver. I mean,
yeah.
And then documents showing properties worth 9.2 crore. That's a real haul, isn't it? Is that typical for these kinds of takedowns?
Well, every case is different, of course. But yeah, seizures like that immediately signal the sheer volume of money involved and probably how long this had been going on. It paints a picture of a very profitable illicit operation. And you're right, during those raids, they arrested 2 key guys, Sanjay and Ajit Soni, partners in this firm, Miss Magnetel BPS Consultants. They nabbed them in Jaipur. Seems like they're pretty central figures.
Okay, so they've got the cash, the gold, the main players. But how did they actually pull it off? How did they trick people? That's the really interesting part for me. What was the actual scam?
Right. So the core of it, what investigators found, was this sophisticated fake call center. It was running out of Pune, and they think since at least July 2024. So quite established.
A fake call center?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, okay, they have the setup, but what was the pitch? How did they actually get people on the hook, especially people in the U.S.?
It was pretty deceptive. They'd pose as legitimate bank representatives calling people in the States. But the initial approach wasn't like, give us your money. It was an offer of phony loans.
Phony loans?
Yeah, basically loans that didn't exist. But the offer itself was the way in. It was designed purely to gain trust. Think about it. An unexpected call offering an easy loan. It might disarm someone.
Ah, okay. So that's the hook. Build that initial trust, make it seem like they're helping before they go for the real goal.
Exactly. That trust is meticulously built. And that's, a really key takeaway for you listening. These scams often start with something that sounds good, not scary. An offer, a solution. Maybe something that seems a bit too good to be true once they had that trust.
Then they go for the info.
Precisely. The next step was coaxing the targets into giving up sensitive personal details, banking information, everything needed.
Not just account numbers, but probably passwords, security answers.
A whole lot. Everything they needed to access the accounts directly.
And once they had that, yeah, the outcome is pretty clear. Money just disappears from victim accounts. Devastating, really. Hard to even imagine. So, okay. They get the money, but hiding that much cash, especially internationally, that sounds incredibly complex.
Yeah.
How did they manage that part? What was the money trail?
You're right. That's often the trickiest part for law enforcement to unravel. The first thing they did, according to the ED, was quickly convert the stolen funds into cryptocurrency, specifically USDT, which is Tether. That's a really common move in these situations.
Right, USDT. Why that one? Is it just about being anonymous or?
Well, anonymity is part of it, but USDT is also seen as relatively stable because it's pegged to the US dollar. And crucially, it's super easy to move across borders.
Yeah.
You can send millions internationally in minutes, way faster and harder to track in real time than, say, a bank wire.
Okay, so crypto is step 1.
Step 1. But just one layer. Then they funneled these digital assets back into India using informal Hawala networks, which are, traditional money transfer systems outside the normal banking channels. They rely on trust and ledgers, not easily audited bank records. Makes it very murky.
Wow. So digital evasion, then old school networks. Quite the combo. And I read some of it also went into shell bank accounts, like disguised as business stuff.
Exactly. More layering, washing it through accounts that looked legitimate, maybe fake invoices, that kind of thing. But, while they did all that complex laundering, where did most of the money actually end up? It wasn't just sitting in accounts.
Right. The lifestyle.
The lifestyle, funding an incredibly extravagant life for the ringleaders. The investigators found evidence of huge purchases, lots of gold, jewelry, luxury cars, expensive properties. It really paints a clear picture of the motivation, pure greed.
It's amazing, though, how it all started. Just an initial complaint, right? To the local police.
Yeah, it began with the Pune Cyber Police. You have to give them credit for their diligent work. They followed that initial lead, and it just kept unraveling, revealing this much bigger international network. That's when the Enforcement Directorate stepped in, given the scale of the money involved.
Yeah.
Shows how local policing can spark major investigations.
And it's worth saying, even with these arrests and seizures, this isn't over. The investigation is still active. They're looking for others involved, trying to get the full picture. Trying to ensure there's justice for the American victims, too. But thinking bigger now, what does a case like this tell us about fighting cybercrime globally? Are we keeping up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, this case is just such a stark reminder that cybercrime doesn't care about borders. These operations are often designed specifically to exploit those international seams, differences in laws, difficulties in tracking money globally. It just highlights how vital constant real-time collaboration between law enforcement agencies around the world is, sharing intelligence, adapting tactics. Because the criminals certainly are. It's a constant race.
What a fascinating, if somewhat alarming deep dive today. We've covered the huge scale of this fraud, the really clever deceptive methods they used, and thankfully the significant action taken by the authorities.
It absolutely underscores how sophisticated these crimes are becoming. Yeah. And it really hammers home the need for all of us, not just the police, to be constantly aware, constantly adapting.
Yeah. And maybe as we finish up, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Financial tech, global connections, they're evolving so fast. What new challenges does that create? Not just for the authorities, but for you. How do you personally protect your information, your assets, when the threats are constantly changing? And sometimes, like we saw here, they start by offering help, not by making threats. How do you stay one step ahead? Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.